From the Opepco Studios in Oklahoma City, this is an OSU update with Kyle Fredrickson. I'm Jenny Carlson. Well, Kyle, in the last few weeks, we've heard MIke Gundy talk a lot about the Cowboy offense. Now it sounds like he's taken some action. He said during his press conference earlier this week, he's a little bit more vested in offense than he has been. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't think we need to sound the alarms on Mike Yurcich's job status by any means, but clearly with some of the deficiencies we've seen on the Cowboys offense, especially in Big 12 play, with Mike Gundy's background, he's been a guy who's offered some ideas and some advice on how to improve it. He's kind of dropped a few hints over the past couple weeks that this was coming. It's not something that just sprung up after the Kansas game. After Iowa State and the post-game press conference, someone asked him about linebacker play, and Gundy admitted during the defensive series, I really wasn't watching. I was paying attention to what we can improve on offense. So clearly there's some problems OSU is having with all of the youth on offensive line, averaging less than 4 yards per rush. Teams have really cued in on Dax Garman's deep ball. So as we kind of move ahead, the Cowboys are going to have to get creative as some better Big 12 defenses are on the line. And if they can't establish that run game, it's going to be real tough to force Garman to keep throwing and to expect to have success, especially in the intermediate game where he's really struggled and thrown quite a few interceptions recently.
Well, you mentioned better defenses, and I think this applies, but TCU's coming up this weekend, and I think because they gave up 61 points to Baylor, so a team that we normally associate pretty good defense with, but they clearly struggled against Baylor in that loss last weekend. Are there some areas that OSU feels like it can exploit against that TCU defense?
Yeah, and when you watch the film of that Baylor-TCU game, I think it's pretty clear that this TCU secondary with losing Jason Verrett from a year ago isn't quite as vaunted as it once was. Bryce Petty, with all of his options at wide receiver and that big arm, he had a lot of success. 5 of his 6 touchdowns were on deep balls, vertical routes, kind of what we've seen from Garmin in the past. So you like that, and you figure that could translate. But again, it comes back to the offensive line. Baylor's got a veteran group, especially at tackle with multi-year starters, and TCU had to respect the run game as well. That might not be the case when the Cowboys go to Fort Worth, because if they can't establish that, they love to play 5 players in their secondary, and they're just going to drop those safeties and force Dax Garman to keep it short and cut away those routes. So it definitely is an encouraging sign, and if the Cowboys can figure out some of their run game issues, it could be an area where they could be successful. But at this point through conference play, they haven't proven that they can do that. So there's still a lot to be seen there. Okay,
lastly, is there a trick? Is there a fix that Mike Gundy's has he shown his hand in that way to say, here's what we're going to do? Or is it just that the players have to play better, the mix has to be better? What's your best guess on what we might see?
I think, in my opinion, there's got to be a better way to use Tyreek Hill. And, in this past game against Kansas, he didn't take one rush. He didn't line up as a running back. And is that the answer? I'm not sure, but at least it's a step to figuring out how to use him differently, because we've seen how dangerous he is on the return game. We've really yet to see that explosion on offense. And when you have a guy with that much speed, you've got to figure out how to utilize him. And if Mike Gundy keeps coming into these press conferences and saying, we have to find better ways to get Tyreek Hill in space, that's not going to ring very nice with OSU fans come late in the season when we keep hearing it over and over again. So I think that's one big aspect of it, but you're right. It's just a lot of young guys who are still learning on the fly, and the more experience, the better.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.